It means dominion, power, and authority is given to anybody that has flesh. If you don't have flesh, you cannot rule in this realm. Demons have no power without a flesh. Principalities have no power without a flesh. Spiritual wickedness have no power without a flesh. In fact, the devil himself has no power in this realm until he takes on a flesh. It's so amazing. God even submits himself to that same principle. God will not function in this realm until he takes on the flesh called Jesus. I'm trying to get you to understand why even God, even though he was fully God, talking about Jesus, he had to take on the form of flesh. He had to go through the protocol he set in place, that the only way you can operate in this realm is to have flesh. Even God himself had to submit to his own word. So Jesus had to be conceived by what we call immaculate conception. Bible says that he had to go through the same process he had laid down, that for you to function in this realm, you must have the flesh. The devil knew that. He knew that there was no way he can function, he can operate without a flesh. And so he had to pervert that which God had created, the snake, and enter into the snake so he can function in this realm. You remember the demons Jesus casted from the madman of Gadara? Those demons have been there long enough, but they know that without the flesh, they cannot function. And so even though Jesus is casting them out of the madman of Gadara, they still negotiated that if we can get any flesh to operate and function in them, please at least give us some pigs so we can enter and have some kind of flesh to function. Spirits need flesh to function. Please understand, Bible makes very clear in the book of 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 that you are first spirit. Everybody looking at me this morning, you are a spirit. Bible says you are a spirit, you have a soul, and you live in a body. What we see is the body, but the real you is not the body we see. The real you is the spirit inside you. And that is why nobody can look at your face and determine what your future will look like. It is just like looking at the cover of the book and making a determination of what a story will look like. Sometimes the title of the book can even be deceptive. You can look at somebody's face and say, you know what, I don't think something good is going to come out of this life. I don't see any future with this guy. You are dead wrong, because that person's destiny is not inscribed in their face. It's not inscribed in their flesh. It's inscribed in their spirit. Every single one of us was created by God, and I know God is not a junkie. He never creates anything that is junky. Everything God created, Bible says he looked at it and he said it was good. If you are the handwork of God, you were created by God. I don't care what your parents told you. I don't care what a system tells you. I don't care what your teachers tell you. What I know is that you are not what society thinks you are. You are who God created you to be. And you are not less than that. You got to rise up and know who God created you to be. It's in your DNA. It's in your spirit. It's none of the physical things that appears. And so look at what God is doing here. God created these beautiful things. He hands it over to man. He gives us authority. He gives us power. And I'm talking about you. God gave you power. With your dark, brown, African-looking face, God gave you that power. He gave you that authority. He gave you that dominion. And society makes you feel and think less of yourself. You're not less. You are who God says you are. You are not what society says you are. You are none of your experiences, because some of us also think that we are our experiences. I failed last 2 years, so I know I'm going to be a failure. You're not. You know, I learned a long time ago that if you're a child of God, you actually don't fail. No, seriously. You're a Christian, you're a believer. You never fail. It's impossible. No, it's impossible. You can't fail. Imagine you took a test and the results came and they wrote on that paper, fail. You know, fail is an F. When I see that, I just put another line at the bottom of the F and turn the F into E. Because what I went through is not failure, it was an experience. Now, somebody needs a man to understand this. What the world calls failure is an experience. I remember many years ago, I invested into a business. It was a bad investment. I lost all my money. I could have looked at that and called that a failure. And for the rest of my life, tap into the future of failure and say, I can never do business anymore. But I looked at that as an experience because you know what? I could sit down all day and cry over that situation, but I determined in my heart that would never be my story. That would never be my situation. I would rather look at it as, you know what? God allowed me to go through all I went through, not as a failure, so I could learn 10 things not to do if I want to do business. It was called experience. You could say past relationships didn't work, but that was not failure. You just learned how not to conduct your life in a relationship so the relationship don't work. You are gaining experience. You wrote that test, it didn't come out well. You wrote it a second time, it didn't come out well. Now you're going back to write that same test a third time. Guess what? You are the most experienced exam writer in that room. You've not been a failure. You've just gained experiences. Tell somebody and say, brother, your failures are not failures, they're experiences. Now type it in the chat if you're on Zoom. Your failures are not failures, they are experiences. Glory to God. But I love this. If you will, come with me to the book of Genesis chapter 3, verse 50, because after God created all he created, he gave you dominion, he gave you power, he gave you authority. The devil is smart about it. He shows up, he enters into the snake, and guess what the devil does? He comes in with a spirit of deception. He comes to deceive man. And man takes that authority, he takes the dominion, the power God gave him, and hands it over to the devil, because the devil comes in with deception. But look at what God says in the book of Genesis chapter 3. When God came back into the garden, because Bible says that in those days, God will come in the cool of the day and hang out with Adam. If you read the account, after God created the Garden of Eden, gave man all the authority, the dominion, the power, and all these beautiful things, Bible makes very clear that in those days, God will come in the cool of the day and hang out with Adam. In case you're wondering, what is the Garden of Eden? Because I know a lot of historians, a lot of archaeologists are trying to figure out where the Garden of Eden is. In fact, if you want to find out where the Garden of Eden is, by reason of some of the things mentioned in the book of Genesis, you could physically tell that the Garden of Eden was located somewhere around Iraq, because Bible says there were two rivers in the Garden of Eden, the river called Tigris and the river called Euphrates. Those rivers are still alive today. They are in the country called Iraq. But that is not the Garden of Eden Bible is talking about, because we know the story after Adam and Eve fell. Bible says God kicks them out of the Garden of Eden. And of course, Bible says God placed a cherubim and a seraphim with a sword to make sure they don't come back. Because Bible says in the Garden of Eden and in the middle of the garden was a tree of life, which we knew if they were to come back and eat of that tree, they will be condemned and yet have life. So God kicks them out. And you would wonder, where is that location? It's not a physical location. The Garden of Eden is not a physical location. Because truly, if the Garden of Eden was a place God will come in the cool of the day and hang out with Adam, you got to understand that the Garden of Eden is God's favorite place for hanging out. It means that as a believer, I can recreate that environment. If I can take an hour and sit in the presence of God, I'm recreating the Garden of Eden. I wake up in the morning, I'm hanging out with God in the Word. I'm studying the Word. I'm praying with God. I'm singing and worshiping Him. I'm reliving the Garden of Eden, because the Garden of Eden is God's favorite place for hanging out. The question is, when was the last time we hanged out with Him? When was the last time? Sometimes we wait for Sunday to hang out with Him. No, God is looking for an alone moment with you. God is looking for a time to spend with you, not a time to spend with everybody. God wants to have a one-on-one with you as a child of God. He wants to have a private moment with you. And one thing we got to realize is that God is not looking to have some kind of a portion of our life. You will see two parents that are separated or divorced fighting over their kids. I want custody. I want to have them weekends. I want to have them during the week. And it's becoming a battle. And so with time, you would realize one parent will find grounds to even get full custody of that child, so that the other parent doesn't get custody. We got to understand that it's no different with God. God is not looking for visitation rights in our lives. He's looking for full custody. Because sometimes we give him visits. You know, like Sunday, I'm going to go to church and visit God. No, he's not looking for visits. He's looking for full custody. And I'm talking about full custody of your life. Look at what it says in the book of Genesis chapter 3 and verse number 15. And I will cause hostility between you and a woman, and between your offspring and her offspring. He will strike your head, and you will strike his heel. Of course, when God comes into the garden, he's upset because, you know what? The woman has eaten of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. He's passed it on to his husband. The husband also, without discerning and taking his rightful place of authority as the head and the leader of the union, he quickly takes of the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil and also eats it. And so God comes into the garden. He's like, Adam, where are you? That is a geographical question. What is your location? And it's so amazing when we are outside the will of God, we can't even think straight. God says, where are you? You got to say, God, I'm at the back of the farm, or I'm at the back of the yard, or somewhere. He's asking you, what is your location? And look at Adam's answer. I heard your voice in the garden, and I figured out I'm naked, so I better go get something to cover myself. It's a geographical question being answered with a fashion statement. Now, that is what happens when we are outside the will of God. We cannot think the way God thinks. We cannot comprehend what God is saying. God is saying, where are you? You say, well, I heard your voice. I figured out I'm naked. I got to go find something to cover myself. No, that wasn't a question. Where are you? What is your location? I am here to hang out with you. What is going on with you?